We are getting so close to possibly trades happening. Now, I'm not saying they're going to happen. It's not for sure, but I do want to get the ball rolling and start But I do want to get the ball rolling because officially today the Mariners DFA'd Seby Zavala. Seby Zavala was initially in that trade for Gregory Santos with the White Sox, and now he is gone. He was kind of screwed. He got tossed around, traded around, put on a team where we already had two main catchers that we signed, and he only was able to play one game this season, and now he's being let go, which opens up room on the roster. And luckily his contract wasn't very much, so we're not eating a lot of money. And looking at every other team that's DFA'd a player so far, they've made a move except for the Astros with a trade or with signing someone else. So now that we've released him, what are the things that the Mariners could be doing as far as trade possibilities? Well, guess what? I put together some theoretical, absolutely no way in hell I'm accurate on this, but this is what I would do if I was the Mariners GM. And yes, for most of you guys are going to come down in the comments and say, so glad you are not the GM for the Mariners because you'd be ruining the future team. Maybe. Well, you know what? I think based on the roster list and looking at all the contracts, I spent many hours on this could be multiple trades during the deadline that can make this team extremely good for the next 3 years and almost, I don't want to say guarantee, but guarantee a chance to make it to the World Series. So let's dive in. Welcome back to the Touch the Bases podcast. Sorry for that super long intro. If you guys haven't already subscribed, please subscribe. I would really appreciate that. Like the video at the end if you made it to the end. If you didn't, I didn't earn it. And then leave a comment down below if you think any of these ideas are right or accurate, or if you have someone else that you'd rather see get traded for these players that I think we should go after. Now keep in mind, we're not getting all of them, but this is what I would do for each one. So let's start off with the basics. The 4 players that are absolutely off limits as far as trades go, and I'm talking prospects, not our regular roster, prospects that are coming up through our system that we will eventually most likely need, and it makes 0 sense for us to get rid of them because we may need them 100%. Harry Ford. I know some of you guys are probably thinking, Harry Ford, that'd be a good trading piece. Yeah, probably. Mitch Garver's on for another year after this, but you'll see a little bit later why I'm not including him. But Cal Raleigh's contract technically ends this season. It's a 1-year deal. I would assume the Mariners are going to re-sign him, but you all who are Mariner fans know Stanton, and Stanton is a terrible owner who's cheap, and Cal might ask for the money that he probably deserves, and we might not even have it. So keep that in mind. We may lose Cal Raleigh, which means that Harry Ford would need to fill in for that slot. Luckily for us, Harry Ford's very high up there and a very good player. On top of that, like I just said, Seby Zavala today got DFA'd. So moving forward with this, you're gonna understand why Mitch Garver, he's gonna be taking a hike. We wouldn't have a backup catcher even if Cal Raleigh did stay. So Harry Ford definitely needed. Cole Young is the #1 prospect in the Mariners organization right now. He's a shortstop / second baseman, which is kind of what we need. Now the thing is that he's ready probably 2025-26. So with that said, Polanco's contract goes into a club option next season, and I know he's injured right now, but when he comes back, if he's still playing the way he was at the beginning of this season, there's no way in hell we should be keeping him. We should get a club option to let him go. We don't have to pay his contract. I believe that's how that one works. That would free up some money, and at that point, Cole Young could probably be called up and be able to play and fill in that second base role. Of course, we want to focus on this year, but for prospects, we got to look at the future, and Cole Young is off limits. Lazaro Montes. I know you guys are like, why are you getting so hyped up over Lazaro Montes? He's a single A. He's not going to be the greatest thing ever. I think he's going to be really good. In fact, he's one of the top 5, I believe, if not top 6. Double check that. He's number 4. He's number 4 in the Mariners' top prospects. So being the best rated outfielder that we have in our organization, we should probably hold off on him, especially since our outfield is kind of a mess right now. And looking forward at a possible trade for an outfielder, which has kind of been the highest talked about, most controversial thing that's been going on rolling into this trade deadline. I would like to have someone who is going to be MLB ready roughly in 2026, which is probably when a lot of these contracts, I'm going to say probably, when a lot of these contracts are in fact going to end in 2026 or 2027, which means that Lazaro Montes will be ready to come up to fill in those slots, and we don't have to look for a big contract to buy out in the offseason to replace the guys we're bringing in now. So hopefully take us to a World Series. Last but not least, Felix Celestin, and that possibly could be Felix Celestin. I don't know, but I've heard it before, but it's very similar to my last name, so I can say what I want. He will be MLB ready in 2027. That's kind of the estimate, depending on if he gets injured or anything like that. But he is one of the most talked about prospects we have. They're super young. We're gonna have a ton of club control on, and him being ready in 2027 is the same year that JP Crawford's contract ends. JP Crawford is 28 years old, which means in 2027 he will be, oh shit, he's younger than me. Oh my god, that's not good. Which means depending on whenever we start negotiating contracts and stuff, he'll most likely be 31, roughly around there. Who knows where he'll be as far as his ability goes when he's at that age. I mean, right now his range has declined slightly. I'm not going to say a lot because that would be absolutely wrong, but he is getting up there in age, which means if JP does not want to re-sign, or if he decides to get out or go on free agency or try his luck somewhere else, it really depends on his ability because this is so many years down the road. We would like to have someone who is going to be ready to play in case he decides to jet. Although I don't see him leaving Seattle, he seems like a Seattle homegrown face. There might be a time where his bat doesn't cool off, but his defensive abilities do, and he might even become our future DH. Who knows? First trade, let's get into it. Let's be as clear as day about this. I don't think we have talked about this on any channel that has to do with the Mariners. I'm talking Locked On hasn't said anything. I'm talking Mariner Mojo hasn't said anything. East Coast M's, I'm pretty sure. I don't think you've mentioned this guy. Lane Thomas, right fielder for the Washington Nationals. Now, why would I choose him? Our right field clearly needs some adjustments. We have a big problem right now. The Mariners have 4 outfielders on their roster currently, and they have 2 DH bats. That means that they have 1 first baseman and 1 catcher who both technically fill a spot for DH position while still having 4 outfielders. Problematic. Right now you have Mitch Garver as a DH and a backup catcher. You have Tyler Locklear, since Ty France now officially came back today, Mitch Haniger, and Victor Robles, who are sitting on the bench right now as our extra outfielders. We're not going to go ahead and count Julio Rodriguez because he's going to get the start every single time. Obviously, he's our flagship player. He's our little Seattle sweetheart, so he doesn't count for this little bit. So we have 4 guys: Dominic Canzone, Mitch Haniger, Luke Raley, and Victor Robles. That's a lot of outfielders, and none of them are really set in stone at a specific position. If you ask me, I would say put Luke Raley out in left field permanently, have Canzone be a backup since his batting average has really dropped significantly. Granted, when he does pitch hit or is coming into the game, he seems to slug the hell out of the ball, but he doesn't perform well all the time. He has a very high strikeout rate. Lane Thomas has 1 more year of arbitration, and then he's an unsigned free agent in 2026. He is coming at under $5.5 million per year. So very affordable compared to some of the outfielders we have. Haniger. And technically his contract would be the same as Haniger's, but we get to up his bat. Lane Thomas currently is batting a .238 batting average, slugging .402, and he has a WRC plus of only 97. So is he spectacular and amazing? No, not exactly, but he's getting on base, and his strikeout rate is 21%, which is a bit high compared to these other guys. But if we were to buy low with a trade and not give up so many prospects, this is the guy I'd probably go after, especially since there is still some club control there, and he's still in the positive as far as his WAR. It might be only a 0.3, but it's viable that the Nationals might actually go for this. And you might ask yourself, why would they go for this? This doesn't make sense. Well, first of all, in the offseason, they signed Eddie Rosario as kind of a last resort to fill in their outfield slot, who isn't doing bad this year. I thought it was a good pickup on their end, but that's only for this season. Jacob Young is probably their best outfielder currently, but looking at next year, they have the top 2 outfielders in their farm system that are pretty much MLB ready, and one of them might actually come and play this season in a couple weeks, and that would be James Wood and Dylan Cruz. If you guys are card collectors of any kind, the Dylan Cruz card is kind of hot right now. Any Bowman box that you can buy, they're very expensive. You can find a Dylan Cruz autograph, you made yourself a couple $100 there, buddy. These 2 guys are legit outfielders that are coming to the MLB for the Nationals, and they don't have room for them if they have Lane Thomas there or if they have Eddie Rosario. I don't see Jacob Young going away anytime anytime soon. He's their best batter. So this tells me that the Mariners have a chance to make a deal with them in order to receive him, because they are going to try and make room for these two prospects. So who do we give up? I know this is where it gets kind of ugly. Well, first of all, they have a really terrible setup for their third base currently. Ben Williamson, he's the third baseman down in our AA. He's number 15 in our prospect ranks right now. We'd send him over there. Taylor Dollard, who's a right-handed pitcher, he's number 20 currently in AAA right now, so that gives him an extra arm probably in the next season. And then Mitch Haniger, they would have to eat his contract, but it seems they like to eat Mariner contracts as they picked up Jesse Winker, and it's been working out for them. So hopefully having Jesse Winker and maybe Mitch Haniger, hopefully they get along, some good talk, maybe that deal could actually happen and Mitch Haniger's contract goes ahead and gets booted off of the Mariners payroll. Keep in mind, there is still $1 million of his contract that the Mariners still have to pay for, and the Giants are still paying for going into next season. So that would be my deal. Lane Thomas for Ben Williamson, Taylor Dollard, and Mitch Haniger. That would be my offer. Is it an overpay? Maybe, but we would be saving money in the long term. We get him for a year and a half, at least until 2026, and he's a solid bat that's going to perform a lot better, I think, than what we have that we can keep in the outfield. Or the other option, and I think you would have to give quite a bit more for this trade, would be Jazz Chisum Jr. I've been talking about him on the channel quite a bit, but he is probably the gold mine that I would want the Mariners to go after. If there's anybody that they trade for in this trade deadline, it is Jazz Chisum Jr. And I'll tell you why. His contract is good till 2027 at $2.625 million per year. His contract would be the 10th most expensive contract on the Mariners roster, the 10th, one of the best players, and we'd be paying him less than 9 other guys. That falls lower than Josh Rojas and slightly by $400,000 more than Andres Munoz. Talk about cheap, and we get him for how many years? 2.5? That's insane. That's awesome. So this is probably going to cost us a little bit more, and it's the Marlins. So they're going to want some in return. But why would we want Jazz? Because of his name? Because he was on the cover of MLB The Show? No, because of his stats, guys. Come on. Average right now is a 266. He's slugging a 449. He has 10 home runs this season already, and we're still a month away from the All-Star game. While last year, the entire season, he hit 19. He's more than halfway to what he hit last season, and we're not even halfway through the actual season of this year. His WRC plus is a 120, very much on par and similar to Julio Rodriguez right now, and his wins above replacement is a 1.6. We're talking that nearly 2 games of wins just for having him on this team. So who would we give away? Now, again, if we did Lane Thomas, obviously this wouldn't work, but if Lane Thomas was not the option, we were not going that route, which I think would be easier to get him, Mitch Haniger would go. Our number 3 prospect, Colt Emerson, would go. Shortstop, second base, and he's estimated to be ready in 2026. And then lastly, Michael Morales, who is going to be a right-handed pitcher that's also in our farm system, who is our number 12 in the system. Now, right now he's at high A, but he is guessed to be ready by 2025. He's a 6'2", 205-pound right-handed pitcher, and I think that would be huge. We have a ton of pitching a little bit lower in our prospect list, and I think we'll be fine giving up some of these top prospect arms, especially since we seem to have quite a few guys that can pitch right now that we're going to hold on to for a few years. So that would be my sell. I would get rid of Mitch Haniger's contract, or maybe even trade him and keep his contract, because Jazz is so cheap, we'd probably be able to afford it. And we would lose Colt Emerson, but we still have Cole Young, our number 1 that's coming up, same position and everything, and then Michael Morales to add to their pitching rotation, who I think would be someone that they could use in the future, maybe as a good trading piece if he does work out. The Mariners aren't going to lose anything right now by giving up a pitcher that's not already pitching in the MLB. You have to consider our rotation and their contracts. Most of them are good for another 4, 5, 6 years. That's the reality of it, and some of them even longer. So giving up a good arm to get a really good bat for 2 to 3 years is bueno. If we were able to get Jazz, I personally would be ecstatic, and I would say I don't need anybody else. That's a good ad for me. At least we filled 2 spots in the outfield that are permanent, and we can start figuring out left field as we go. I honestly would give it to Luke Raley at this point. I understand that he's been striking out a little bit the last week or so, more than what we want, but after the sweep against the Rangers, I see him being a very good asset out there. And Dahmen, if he can pick up his batting average, I understand he hits bombs, maybe he's a pitch hitter kind of guy, but Luke Raley's my dude. And the next one is an outfielder. I'm just kidding, it's not an outfielder, because guess what? I am completely completely out on Robert Jr. Luis Robert Jr. Everybody, I think Fuzzy said something. You've been saying it wrong. Well, it's spelled Robert, so guess what? I'm going to call him Robert. I don't care. It is what it is. It's an American accent. I call him Robert. This isn't Canada. Why am I out? Maybe because I think there's too many teams that are on Robert at this point because of the injuries. Mookie Betts just went down with an injury, which sucks for my fantasy league. And the Dodgers are going to have to scurry around and figure out who they're going to put everywhere moving forward. I understand he was mostly at shortstop, but he was the outfielder, and their outfielders haven't really worked out with James Outman just going down to AAA, and Jason Hayward's like, okay. Teoscar Hernandez is probably their best outfielder at this point, but they would probably be better off if they were to add a bat, because that's the big thing that they lost. It wasn't really defensively, it was their bat that they lost. And there's only 5 guys, if you saw my last video, that are really carrying that Dodger team. And now that Betts is gone, I mean, even though he was cooling off this last couple weeks, he was still a major asset for them. On top of that, Getz is probably going to want this Juan Soto deal. That's what everybody's been talking about. And the Juan Soto deal is not what Luis Robert Jr. is worth. I'm sorry. And we don't really have the farm system to give up that many prospects and that many guys. And I guarantee you they're not going to want any of our main players, which are the guys that we're juggling with right now. All 4 of those outfielders we mentioned, they're not going to want any of them. They're going to want Lazaro Montes. They're going to want Cole Young. They're going to want to get Colt Emerson. They're going to want Ty Pete. They're going to want Tyler Locklear so they can actually have somebody at first base. Like, it's going to be obnoxious, and I don't think it's realistic, and I don't think it's a good idea for the Mariners to be in on someone who is only going to give you 2 months and the next season, and then you lose them all forever, and you lost all your prospects in the deal as well. Let other teams go ahead and blow their farm system. We don't need to. I only have 2 more for you. One is a big bat that hasn't been batting, I guess, extremely well. Vladimir Guerrero Jr. Yes, I said Vladdy, and I said first base. Does that mean that I want Ty France gone? No, I didn't say that. Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is slashing a 284, a 373, and a 404 slugging. He has a WRC plus of 127 with a WAR of 1.1. He's walking 12% of the time, and he's only striking out 16% of the time. These are numbers that the Mariners need. I will tell you a World Series guarantee if they picked up Vladimir Guerrero Jr. and they were able to pick up Jazz Chisum, and we roll with that lineup moving forward. I'm serious. I can guarantee it. You might disagree, but tell me why in the comments if you disagree. But I'm telling you, add those 2 bats, 100% on board, and I'll explain a little bit more. Who did they get? We would pick up Vladimir Guerrero Jr. for Mitch Garver, Jonathan Clase, and Tyler Locklear. Ooh, it's gonna hurt you guys a lot. I said Tyler Locklear, not Ty France. So the replacement for first base would be Tyler Locklear. They're gonna need somebody to go in there. He's been batting well. He's got a good picture handling himself in the MLB. With the 2 home runs he's hit a double. He's been out there defensively doing well, and it's great and fine and dandy. Is it proven anything to us? Not yet, and I don't want to take anything for granted, but his face value at this point is very high, which gives us an edge as far as offering him to another team. On top of that, Jonathan Clase, very fast, speedy, good defender, decent bat. I wouldn't say a ton of power, but really good contact. And honestly, the Blue Jays don't have the strongest outfield. They went back and brought back Kevin Kiermaier because that's all they had at the time, and they signed him and they liked him, and you know, he's been okay, but he's not someone anybody's talking about on ESPN. Not at all. And then Mitch Garver, who has been batting terribly. But we can also blame it on Safeco or T-Mobile Park, whatever you want to call it. We can blame it on the stadium and the marine layer. Mitch Garver has not batted very well at all this season. He has hit a few dingers here and there, and that's fine and dandy, and it's good, but he's not enough to be a DH for us. It doesn't make any sense. And like I was going back to as far as people we keep, Harry Ford was number 1 on that list because I don't know who would be backing up Cal if we re-signed him. And if we lost Cal, he would definitely be our next go-to guy. And we would never want Mitch Garver to stay on this team to replace Cal Raleigh behind the ditch every single day, because he has no stamina and durability to withstand that. He's going to get hurt again. So I'll say it again, Vladimir Guerrero Jr. for Mitch Garver, Jonathan Clase, and Tyler Locklear. I think that's a juicy bunch. You have a high-ranked prospect in Tyler Locklear who's coming up. He's number 8 in our system, one of the higher ones in first baseman around the entire MLB. And you have Jonathan Clase, who I guess technically is no longer a prospect anymore, but he is up there and he can hit, he can run, and he could be an asset for them, especially in ground coverage. And then adding a bat who probably could perform a lot better in Rogers Stadium versus T-Mobile Park. Will this happen? Very unlikely. Very unlikely. I'm not going to even talk about Bo Bichette. It makes absolutely zero sense. Some people have talked about Bo Bichette going over to second base, leaving JP at shortstop, but he's not a Mookie Betts. I don't see him being able to just adjust himself to play a whole nother position that I don't think he's played in years, and his bat's been good, but I just don't see that happening. I don't see it's worth it. I would rather get players that are used to playing the position we put him at. Which brings me to my last guy, because technically I guess he's a third baseman, but he could play second, and he's actually normally used to playing second before they moved him to third base. Luis Rengifo. If you guys don't know who this guy is, he is tearing it up for the Angels, and it doesn't say much because the Angels aren't doing very well, but he is tearing it up for them, and it would be nice to actually add him on this team. At the same time, there's also another aspect that might be causing issues and why this would never happen, and that would pretty much be Jerry DiPoto, president of baseball operations, who used to work for the Angels and quit because of the bad blood, because of the way he was treated, because of the way they were running their organization. Clearly the Angels have not been good for a long time, and it's probably because it's not the GM and it's not the president of baseball operations, it's probably the ownership. And so because of that, Jerry might not want to deal with the Angels since he's became the president of baseball operations for the Mariners. So that might be our biggest roadblock to where this doesn't even work out. But if he was like, screw it, I want this guy, he's batting a .315, slugging at .435, his WRC plus of 127, which is on par with what Julio usually puts up. He has a WAR of 1.2. He has 18 stolen bases already this season, which is 2 more than Julio Rodriguez does, who is leading our team. And he can not only play third base and second place, he can also play shortstop and the outfield. He is versatile as a utility guy everywhere. He's like 4 Dylan Moores of ability mushed into one. Very impressive and very competent at what he can do. Now you say, why are you hitting so hard on second base? Because Jorge Polanco has a club option next season, and like I said before, if he comes back from his injury and he continues batting the way he has at the beginning of this season, it's going to be a pain in the ass for me to turn on the TV, watch the Mariners play, and see him bat. It's so many opportunities where he's up with runners in scoring position and nothing gets done, and it's costs I think a few games, and he was a bust trade. It is what it is, and I'd rather cut my losses and go after somebody who can not only play second but also play third and fill in the gaps if we have an injury or something like that, but we can keep his bat in there. And that's a beauty about him being such a good utility player, is that he is good enough to bat around and not just be some defensive asset. He is a major bat that's not just stuck at first, that's not stuck at catcher, that's not stuck at third and said I don't do anything else, like Manny Machado or Mitch Garver. It is what it is. Personally, Josh Rojas, he earned third base. He should be our permanent third baseman. I like him as a batter. I like him as a defender. He's got good vibes. He's producing. He's coming in clutch. He's underrated in my book. Rojas, you stay at third. Rengifo, I'd love to see him at second base. So who would we do it? We would have to give up, I don't think too much, but Angels are not going to the playoffs. So Aiden Smith, who's the Mariners number 13, he would be the outfielder for them. And then we would have to give him an infielder. And I would say Dawel Joseph, he's a shortstop. He's number 16 in our prospect pool. So our number 13 and number 16 in outfield and a shortstop. I think that equates to his utility ability. I didn't mean to rhyme there. That was dumb. I'm sorry, guys. And Rengifo can join the Mariners, and hopefully we can make it to a World Series for the first time and just finally bring something to Seattle that's been needed since, God, what was it, 2016 when the Seahawks went to the Super Bowl, something like that. Tell me what you guys think in that in the comments. Obviously, you guys saw on the screen the nice little replica of what could be if we got Jazz, if we got Vlad, and if we got Rengifo and added to the lineup. And just my thoughts. What do you guys think? Is it realistic? Is it not realistic? What are the issues that we might run into that I didn't cover? I think I tried to cover as much as we could. I mean, is it going to take more? Probably, but how much are we willing to give up? Love you guys' input. Please leave a comment down below, like, and if you are still here, subscribe. I love you all. Bye.